Hey, if you like the type of content I make, hit subscribe. That way, the next story will just pop up right on your wall, waiting for you.
I took the job to pay off my student loans. A quiet assistant to a rich, mysterious CEO. No questions. No drama. But on my third week, I found out who he really was. He doesn't just run businesses. He runs the underworld. And when I signed that NDA, I also signed a marriage contract without knowing it. Before we dive in, if you're new here, welcome. And if you love dark mafia romance with twists, heat, and a whole lot of drama, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. New York City. The storm hadn't started yet, but it was close. The sky was a bruised shade of gray, pregnant with rain that hadn't yet fallen. Wind tangled through the streets like it was chasing something. Beneath it, the city pulsed, honking, shouting, grinding its teeth. Ava Romano stepped out of the subway, pulling her coat tighter around her. Her umbrella immediately flipped inside out. "Perfect," she muttered, shoving the useless thing into a trash can. Her boots, scuffed, faux leather, already peeling at the toe, splashed through puddles as she crossed to the towering building ahead. Valenti Holdings. The building rose like a blade, all black glass and sharp edges. No logos, no flashing screens, just a marble plaque by the entrance and a revolving door that whispered instead of creaked. It didn't scream wealth. It whispered power, the kind old money didn't need to flaunt. Inside, the air smelled like expensive cologne and polished wood. The silence was so thick, it felt like a rule. Behind the front desk sat a woman who looked like she was carved out of stone. Icy blonde hair slicked into a bun, cheekbones sharp enough to draw blood, not a single blemish on her porcelain skin. "I'm Ava Romano," Ava said, clearing her throat. "Interview at 9:30. Executive assistant." The woman barely looked up. Her blue eyes scanned a screen. 32nd floor. "Mr. Valenti is expecting you. No badge, no small talk. Just a smooth press of a button, and the elevator opened. Ava stepped in, suddenly aware of how cheap her outfit felt. Her blouse, white, a little tight across the chest, third hand from a consignment shop. Her skirt, a size too big and pinned at the waist. Her hair, a dark, stubborn wave that refused to sit flat no matter how much heat she threw at it. She ran her fingers through it, trying to tame the frizz. "You look fine," she whispered to herself. "It's just a job." Floor 32. The doors opened to a hallway drenched in shadow and silence. The floor was carpeted in something so thick it silenced every step. The walls were paneled in deep walnut. A single light glowed at the end of the hall. She walked, each step echoing louder in her head than it did in the room. There was only one door. It was open. She knocked on the frame. "Come in," a voice said. It was deep, calm, the kind of voice that didn't need to raise itself to be obeyed. She entered. Leonardo Valenti was not what she expected. He sat behind a massive desk made of obsidian glass and dark wood. No clutter, just a closed folder, a black pen, and a half-finished glass of espresso. He was young, early 30s at most, but his energy was anything but. Tall, at least 6 feet 3 inches, with broad shoulders and a chest that filled out his black shirt effortlessly. No tie. First 2 buttons undone. The sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing strong forearms and a silver watch that probably cost more than her apartment. His face was sharply cut, cheekbones high, jaw square, the kind of masculine geometry people paid surgeons to replicate. A faint scar traced the corner of his jawline, subtle but unforgettable. His eyes, though, steel gray like gunmetal, were the kind that made you feel naked, not in a romantic way, in a you can't hide anything from me way. His hair was black, thick, and pushed back cleanly, not a strand out of place. Every part of him looked deliberate, dangerous in a way that didn't need to threaten. He was power personified. "You're Ava Romano," he said, eyes flicking down to the folder, then back to her. 25, CUNY graduate, marketing, GPA, unimpressive, 2 jobs in 12 months, 1 abandoned, 1 laid you off. Ava blinked. "That's accurate, yes. But I prefer honesty," he said, cutting through her sentence. "So finish this line. I'd be a good assistant because—" She hesitated. Her throat tightened. "Because I'm desperate," she said. For a moment, nothing. Then, his mouth twitched. Barely. A ghost of a smile. "Better than lying," he said. He closed the folder. "You start Monday." She stared. "That's it?" "I don't do second interviews." He stood now, and it was somehow worse. He was even more imposing on his feet. "You'll be paid $15,000 a month, cash." She blinked. 15. Cash, he repeated. No taxes. No paperwork. NDA will be sent tonight. Read it. Don't skim it. Wait. 15,000 a month. For what? I mean, what exactly will I be doing? You'll organize my calendar, screen my calls, filter my schedule, handle travel, keep people away when I say so. And sometimes, he looked at her, his voice dropping half an octave. You'll do things that aren't in the job description. She stared at him. His expression hadn't changed. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. She swallowed. Like what? You'll know when I tell you. The silence between them sharpened. You can walk now, he added, or sign the contract tonight and keep your mouth shut. Every instinct told her to run, but something else, something just as loud, whispered, this man isn't asking, he's choosing you, and that means something. She nodded slowly. Send it. He stepped closer, not threatening, just deliberate. Don't take this lightly. I don't. Then don't be late. Monday, 8 a.m. Back in the elevator, Ava finally exhaled. She felt like she'd just walked out of a different world. Not corporate, not professional, predatory. This wasn't a job. It was an arrangement. And she had no idea that somewhere, buried deep in that NDA, was a clause written in small print and iron. Marriage. Chapter 2. The Contract. Ava Romano stared at her laptop screen like it was about to explode. The email had arrived 2 hours earlier, precisely at 9:30 p.m. on the dot. No subject line, no sender name. Just a black email address ending in an encrypted domain she didn't recognize. Attached. One PDF file. NDA_confidential_A Romano.pdf. She'd opened it, expecting the usual. Legal fluff, privacy language, maybe a non-compete clause. Instead, it was 32 pages of precision-engineered legal intimidation. The first few pages were standard. No recording devices, no disclosure of business practices, no contact with media. Then it got weirder. Section 6. Personal Security Compliance. Ava Romano agrees to maintain zero unauthorized contact with third parties regarding the professional and personal affairs of Mr. Leonardo Valenti. Violations will result in immediate termination and legal action. Section 9. Residential relocation. Upon request, the employee may be expected to relocate temporarily or permanently to a location determined by Mr. Valenti or his designated representatives. Section 14. Marital Cover Clause. Ava Romano consents to enter into a legal marital union with Mr. Leonardo Valenti, should such an action be deemed necessary for business, political, or security reasons. This clause is binding and not subject to revocation upon execution of this agreement. She blinked, then blinked again. Scanned the sentence 3 more times, even highlighted it. Marital union. Her stomach twisted. "This has to be a mistake," she whispered, dragging a hand through her hair. "They must have sent the wrong file." But the rest of the contract was clearly meant for her. Her name appeared 15 times. Her information, her signature block, and the way it was written, it wasn't a mistake. This clause was meant to be buried. It wasn't front and center. It was snuggled between technical legalese, bracketed by pages no normal person would read closely. And then there was the deadline. Signature required by 12 a.m., 1 minute from now. The text started to blur. Her heart pounded like a drum in a locked room. She scrolled again. The marriage clause didn't explain anything else. No details, no timeline, no reasons, just, should such an action be deemed necessary. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. 1 new text message, 30 seconds, sign it or walk away. Ava stared at the screen, her chest rising and falling too fast. Was it him? Had he been watching her open it? Was this some kind of test? What kind of employer buried a marriage clause in an NDA? And what kind of man believed he could actually own someone this way? She thought of that office, the silence, his eyes, the way he didn't threaten her. He warned her, like gravity warning you not to jump. 15 seconds. She looked at the document. Her hand moved almost on its own, gripping the trackpad. The digital signature field glowed faintly. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was dash dash. Click. She signed. The contract vanished. Literally, the moment her signature confirmed, the file blinked out of existence, and the window closed. Her email refreshed automatically. Empty inbox. Her phone vibrated again. Text received. Monday, 8 a.m. black car. Outside your building. Pack for 1 week. Monday, 7:59 a.m. The black car was already there. It wasn't a town car or a taxi. It was a matte black BMW with tinted windows and no license plate. The kind of vehicle that looked government-issued or Mafia-owned. Ava stepped out of her apartment building carrying 1 duffel bag and wearing the nicest outfit she had. Black slacks, a fitted blazer, and heels that pinched her toes but made her feel like she had armor on. The window rolled down. The driver was a man in his 40s. Clean-shaven, black suit, mirrored sunglasses, not a smile in sight. Ava Romano? Yes. He popped the door open, said nothing else. 32 floors up again. This time, no hallway silence. No long walk. The elevator doors opened directly into Leonardo Valenti's office. He stood at the window with his back to her, watching the city like it was a movie he'd seen before. When he turned, he didn't smile. He just said, "You signed it." "I did," Ava replied, her voice tight. Any questions? She held her chin higher than she felt. Yeah, just one. Go ahead. What kind of CEO includes a marriage clause in a job contract? For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not surprise, not regret, amusement. You read more than I thought, he said, walking toward the bar cart in the corner. Whiskey? It's 8 a.m. He poured himself a glass. There's no marriage happening today, Ava, he said. That clause exists for specific circumstances. Rare ones. Insurance. Insurance for you. He tilted the glass in her direction. Correct. What kind of business are you running where marrying your assistant counts as a safety net? His eyes locked with hers. The kind where people try to kill me. Often. Her breath caught. He crossed the room slowly, not looming, but in full control. Every step he took felt rehearsed, calculated. I'm not a typical CEO, you know that. Yeah, I'm getting that vibe. He stopped inches away from her. I don't need you to understand everything. Not yet. But I need to know you'll follow the rules. That if I say, sign, you sign. If I say, leave everything and come with me, you don't ask where. She tried to hold her ground. But it was hard to look into his eyes and not feel like she was being dissected. You're asking me to trust you, she said. No, he replied. I'm telling you that you already did. When you signed. Later that day, Ava stood alone in a sleek, windowless room she hadn't expected to see. Not an office, not a conference room, a wardrobe-fitting room, full of tailored suits, dresses, designer shoes arranged like an art gallery. The same driver handed her a handwritten note. Welcome to the life. No uniform, just expectations. You'll dress for them accordingly. No name, no signature. She looked into the mirror, holding a deep emerald dress in her hands. Expensive, silky soft in a way nothing she owned had ever been. She was in. Whatever this was, whatever life she had just signed into, it had already swallowed her whole. And the man at the center of it, he hadn't even started with her yet. Chapter 3. The Warning. Ava Romano could feel the shift before she saw it. The air in the office, normally cool and unnervingly still, had taken on a different texture. Heavier somehow, charged with something invisible and wrong, like the first sharp drop in barometric pressure before a storm cracks the sky wide open. The usual hum of productivity, the clicking of keys, the soft whisper of the espresso machine, the quiet shuffle of leather soles on stone floors, had disappeared. In its place was something colder, quieter. She looked up from her screen, her fingers still resting on the keyboard, hovering over an unfinished calendar entry. Her stomach tightened without reason. Instinct, maybe. Or something older. Something primal. The elevator at the end of the corridor opened without a sound. 2 men stepped out, dressed in flawless suits that looked like they'd been cut directly from midnight, but there was nothing elegant about them. Their movements were too stiff, too precise, like soldiers, not businessmen. One was built like a freight train, with a neck like a tree trunk and a faded scar that ran from behind his ear to just above his collar. The other was leaner but no less threatening, his face clean-shaven, expression utterly blank, and his eyes wrong, not empty, just absent, like he wasn't really there at all. They didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't look confused or curious about where they were going. They already knew. They walked straight toward Leonardo Valenti's office. The taller one glanced at Ava as they passed. Not a glance, actually. A measured pause. A second too long. His eyes dragging over her face, her body, not in a lecherous way, but with cold calculation, as if he were filing away every detail in case he needed it later. The kind of look that made you feel like a number in a database. A variable in an equation, not a person. She instinctively straightened in her seat, her fingers curling around the edge of the desk. Then the door to Leonardo's office opened. His voice carried out into the corridor, smooth and direct. Inside. The men obeyed without hesitation. The door closed with a heavy click, and just like that, the hallway felt darker. Ava tried to focus on her screen again, eyes skimming the next meeting on the schedule, coded with two initials she didn't recognize, and a time slot blocked out in red. But her body wasn't listening. Her skin buzzed with nerves, heart tapping a steady warning beat against her ribs. She wasn't sure why she did it. Maybe she wanted confirmation. Maybe she didn't want to be the kind of woman who heard screams later and lied to herself that she hadn't. So she stood, walked slowly, carefully, to the corner where the corridor met the office door. Close enough to hear. Close enough to regret it. You lied to me, Angelo. Leonardo's voice was different now. Not raised, not furious, worse. Controlled. Measured. Dangerous. I didn't, Leo. I swear to God. I didn't know. Crash. The sound was sudden and loud and violent, the unmistakable noise of something heavy slamming into something harder. A desk, maybe. A body. A wall. Ava flinched, her back instinctively pressing against the paneled wall, her breath stuck in her throat. You moved product through my port without permission, Leonardo said, the words sharp as a scalpel, clipped at the ends like they'd been honed for cutting. That's not a mistake. That's a betrayal. There was a wet-sounding cough, then silence. Then the muffled sound of something being dragged or shifted across the floor. You want a warning shot? Leonardo asked. Or a message? There was no reply. Then, softly, the answer came. Hand. Ava didn't understand at first. Then she did, and the realization turned her blood to ice. The scream that followed wasn't theatrical or movie loud. It was real. Ragged and sharp, a sound pulled straight from a man's throat when pain becomes an animal and claws its way out. It was the sound of someone realizing that nothing was going to save them, that the pain wouldn't stop when it should. Ava slapped a hand over her mouth, every instinct inside her begging her to move, to run, to pretend she hadn't heard, to unhear it somehow, but her body wouldn't listen. She was frozen in place, her pulse hammering through her temples. Another muffled noise, metal clinking, something being cleaned maybe. Maybe a blade, maybe dash. The door opened. Leonardo Valenti stepped out, calm as a man leaving a lunch meeting. His jacket was off now, revealing a crisp white shirt rolled at the sleeves. The fabric near his wrist was marked faintly with blood. Not dripping, not dramatic, just present, like a signature on a contract. His expression was blank. His hair was still perfectly in place. His silver watch gleamed under the soft hallway light. He saw her. He paused. For a heartbeat, Ava saw something crack behind those unreadable gray eyes. Not guilt exactly, but a flicker of thought. A moment where he seemed to register her shock, her fear, her standing there pale-faced and silent like a ghost in heels. And then it was gone. The mask slid back into place. "Cancel my 5 o'clock," he said evenly. Ava nodded, not trusting her voice. He stared for a moment longer. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back into his office. The door closed behind him with a soft click. It sounded louder than the scream. The ride home that night was quiet. Too quiet. She sat in the back seat of the black BMW, her hands folded neatly in her lap, trying not to shake. Outside, the city passed by like a dream she didn't belong in anymore. Lights flickered, horns blared, people crossed streets and laughed and checked their phones. They had no idea. She kept replaying the moment the door opened, the blood on his cuff, the stillness in his voice, the way he hadn't denied anything. Not to her, not to himself. It wasn't a mask. That was who he was. And the worst part? He hadn't seemed proud of it. He hadn't seemed guilty either. He'd seemed resigned, like he'd been born into a world where power cost blood, and he'd paid so many times he no longer bothered to count. Later that night, Ava sat on the floor of her apartment, her back against the couch, tea cooling beside her. The lights were off. She didn't want brightness. She didn't want comfort. She wanted answers. But none came. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You heard too much." Her breath caught. Then another message followed. "So let me make one thing clear." Pause. "You're safe because I say you are." She stared at the screen. She should have deleted the messages, blocked the number, screamed something. But she didn't. She saved them instead. And whispered to herself, "You're already in this." Wednesday, 8 a.m. sharp. Ava walked into the office dressed in black from head to toe. Not for mourning, not for drama, for armor, black blazer, black dress, heels that clicked like a metronome on the marble floor. Her hair was pulled back tight, her expression unreadable. She stepped into the 32nd floor like she belonged there, like the blood had never shaken her, like she didn't dream of screaming in silence. Leonardo Valenti looked up from his desk when she entered. Perfect suit, silver cufflinks, no trace of yesterday anywhere on him. "You came back," he said. "I follow orders," she replied. He raised an eyebrow. "Do you have questions?" "Yes," she said. "One." He leaned back slightly in his chair. "Ask." She didn't flinch. "Do you kill people, Mr. Valenti?" There was no pause, no surprise, only quiet. "Only when I have to." Silence expanded between them, slow and heavy. Then Ava nodded once, eyes steady. "Then I'll do the same." His lips twitched, and for the first time, not out of amusement or mockery, but something stranger. Leonardo Valenti smiled. Not wide, not warm, but real. Chapter 4. The Reveal. The car didn't take her home this time. Instead of turning toward her apartment in Queens, the black BMW cut across the Williamsburg Bridge and kept driving, silent and steady, past the lights and noise of Brooklyn, deeper into a part of the city Ava had never seen before. It was the kind of neighborhood you didn't notice on a map. No bars, no traffic, just long stretches of warehouses, abandoned buildings with shattered windows, and quiet corners, that looked too clean to be empty. She glanced at the driver. "Where are we going?" He didn't answer. He never did. They pulled into a gated lot surrounded by 10-foot walls and motion sensor lights. The gate opened automatically, no guard in sight. Just a surveillance camera mounted on the steel fencing, tracking her with a slow, robotic pan. The car rolled to a stop in front of a tall black building. No signage, no windows on the lower floors. Just a single door, and a man waiting outside, dressed in black with an earpiece and a calm expression that looked military. As the car door opened, Ava felt a strange heat crawl across her skin. This wasn't a workplace. This was something else. Inside, the air changed. Not the temperature, the weight. She followed the man in silence through a marble hallway lined with security cameras and steel doors. Each step echoed, each turn felt purposeful. They passed no reception desks, no secretaries, no open spaces. This place was built like a bunker, not an office. Finally, they reached an elevator. No buttons, just a key card. The man pressed it to a panel, and the doors slid open. "Mr. Valenti is expecting you," he said. That was all. Floor -2. Not up. Down. The elevator opened into silence. Ava stepped out into what looked like a private vault. Stone walls, glass panels, dim lights recessed into the ceiling like stars in a cave. And at the center of it all, Leonardo Valenti. He stood in front of a massive digital wall screen, rotating through satellite maps, encrypted files, live footage. Half of it in languages Ava couldn't read. Dressed in a black shirt and slacks, his sleeves rolled, his expression focused. He didn't look surprised to see her. He looked like he had been waiting. "You brought me here," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Yes," he replied, without turning. "You were always going to end up here. Sooner or later." "Why now?" "Because you're already in it," he said. "And it's time you knew what it actually is." He turned from the screens and walked toward her. His face was unreadable as always, but his posture, loose, deliberate, in full control, told her everything. This wasn't a confession. It was a presentation. "You've been wondering what I do," he said. "Not the sanitized version on the website, the real business." "I've been wondering a lot more than that," she said quietly. He gave a small nod. "Good." Then, without a single beat of hesitation, he said, "I run one of the 3 major crime families in New York. The Valenti Syndicate controls shipping, ports, smuggling, weapons contracts, offshore laundering, digital surveillance, private security, and more than a few politicians." Ava didn't move, didn't speak. Her brain stuttered, trying to catch up. Leonardo kept going. "You've seen The Office. That's the legal face. Valenti Holdings manages real estate, tech startups, and offshore investments. It's real, but it's not the core." He tapped the screen behind him. A map of the East Coast lit up with red lines that connected like spiderwebs. Ports, districts, cargo routes. This is the core. Shipping, trade, movement, anything that comes in or out of this city. If it's not legal, it goes through me. If it's dangerous, it goes through me. If it's worth killing for..." He turned back to her. "It already has." Ava's legs felt like lead. Not because she was shocked. She wasn't, not completely. But because hearing it confirmed aloud, so plainly, with no apology, pulled the floor out from under everything she'd tried to convince herself of. "You're a criminal," she said. No, he said, stepping closer. I'm a kingpin. She blinked. He held her gaze. There's a difference. What difference? She asked. Dead is dead. Leonardo's mouth curled slightly at the edge. That's true. But some men kill for chaos, some for power, some for greed. I kill for order. She stared at him, the pieces sliding into place whether she wanted them to or not. The money, the silence, the way he moved through rooms like nothing could touch him, because nothing did. You're not afraid of anyone, she said. He stepped closer. That's not true. I'm afraid of weakness. Is that what you think I am? She asked. No, he said. That's why I brought you here. He walked to a panel on the wall and pressed his palm against it. A hidden compartment opened. Inside was a safe. He keyed in a code, and it clicked open. He pulled out a black leather folder and handed it to her. Ava opened it slowly. Inside were documents, not contracts, not schedules, surveillance photos. Of her apartment, her walking to the subway, her eating at her favorite ramen shop in the East Village, dates stamped on each one, times, coordinates. Her hands shook. Why? I had to vet you, he said. I do it with everyone close to me, especially the ones I put in front of bullets. She looked up, eyes burning. You were watching me before I even started working for you. Yes. You knew everything about me. I had to. Why? He paused, then said, Because I knew I'd need you. Ava stared at him. Need me for what? To look like something I'm not, he said. To make the world believe I'm a man with something to lose. He stepped close again, so close she could smell his cologne. Clean, subtle, expensive, like cedar and smoke. That's what the marriage clause is for. It's not a joke. It's not a stunt. It's a shield. A shield from who? Everyone. A long silence settled between them. Then Leonardo said softer now. They're watching. Always. Rivals feds people inside my own organization. The second I look vulnerable, they'll come for me. But a man with a wife, a man with a life he protects, that man is harder to move against. He's human and dangerous. Ava's voice dropped to a whisper. And I'm supposed to play that wife? No, he said. You're supposed to be her. If when I ask. She shut the folder, looked him in the eye. What happens if I say no? His expression didn't change. You won't. Because you already didn't. She left the compound at midnight, alone in the back seat again. But she wasn't the same girl who'd stepped in. Something had shifted. Something irreversible. Not because of the blood. Not because of the power. Because for the first time in her life, someone had chosen her not for what she could do, but for what she could protect. And she couldn't decide if that was terrifying or intoxicating. Chapter 5. Claimed. Saturday, 6:45 p.m. Ava had no idea where they were going. All she'd received was a message from Leonardo's assistant. Formal attire. Car at 6. You'll be introduced tonight. Introduced to who? As what? The dress had been delivered that morning. Black silk, floor-length, sleeveless, backless, with a slit that ran high up one leg. Too elegant for a business function, too severe for a party. And the label? Custom, no price tag. No return address. Her fingers had trembled as she zipped herself in, the fabric cool against her skin. She looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Hair sleeked into a low chignon. Diamond earrings that weren't hers. Lips painted a shade of red that whispered warnings and promises at the same time. She didn't look like an assistant. She looked like something expensive, something dangerous. She looked claimed. The venue was a private estate in the hills outside the city, gates taller than buildings. Security in tuxedos with hidden earpieces. No signs, no press, no address on GPS. Only the kind of presence you couldn't buy. Not because it was priceless, but because it wasn't for sale. The car stopped. Ava stepped out into the evening air, instantly aware of how exposed she felt in the gown. The driveway was filled with black cars, tailored suits, glittering dresses, and faces that looked like they belonged in tabloids. Billionaires, politicians, the kind of people who smiled while signing deals that ruined countries. She wasn't one of them, but she was standing among them. And as soon as she stepped through the marble archway and into the estate's main hall, she felt it, eyes turning. Not curious, not admiring, assessing. And then everything shifted. Because he walked in, Leonardo Valenti, black tuxedo, perfectly tailored. No tie, just the collar open and his presence filling the space like gravity. He didn't smile, didn't scan the room. He didn't need to. The moment he entered, conversations dipped, shoulders turned, glasses paused mid-air. He saw her immediately and walked straight to her like nothing else existed. "You look exactly how I intended," he said. She raised an eyebrow, swallowing her nerves. "And how's that?" "Dangerous," he said. "And unforgettable." Before she could answer, he offered his arm. She hesitated for half a breath, then slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow. His body was warm and solid beneath the fabric, and with every step they took into that glittering hall of dangerous people, she felt herself become part of something larger than she'd prepared for. Whispers followed them like perfume. "Who is she? Is that his fiancée? I thought she was just his assistant." And then, without preamble, Leonardo stopped near a cluster of men in tailored suits speaking Italian too fast for her to follow. One of them raised a glass and said something sharp, something that made the group laugh. Leonardo didn't laugh. He turned to Ava, his voice low. "Remember what I said about shields?" She nodded slowly. "Good," he said. Then, in one motion, he took her hand, turned toward the crowd, and said, loud enough to silence the room, "Allow me to introduce my wife." Silence. A beat of stillness so thick it felt like glass. Ava's stomach dropped. Every eye in the room turned toward her. Leonardo's expression didn't change. Calm, controlled, like he'd just declared something obvious, not earth-shattering, like he hadn't just detonated a bomb in front of New York's most powerful criminals. She forced a breath, willed her face to stay neutral. Didn't look at him, didn't flinch. She just nodded slightly and let them believe it. Let them believe everything. After that, everything moved faster. Glasses clinked. Conversations resumed. People came forward with smiles that never reached their eyes. Hands were extended. Compliments delivered. deals hinted at. But the balance of power had shifted. She could feel it. Whatever Leonardo had been before, this announcement had transformed him, made him look untouchable, settled, human. A man with something to lose. A man no rival would dare to provoke without thinking twice. And her? She wasn't a piece on the board anymore. She was the move. They danced once. Just once. In the center of the room, music swelling around them, Ava's hand on his shoulder, his hand at the small of her back, guiding her like he was born to lead. "You should have told me," she said quietly as they turned. "I couldn't risk you saying no." "Because it's not real?" He looked down at her, eyes dark. "It's real to them. That's what matters. And what happens if someone tests it?" His voice dipped lower. "Then we make it real." She froze. His grip didn't tighten. He didn't push her closer, but his hand stayed at her back. Firm. Warm. "This wasn't about control," he added. "It was about survival. Yours or mine? Both." They left before midnight. The car ride back was quiet, the air thick with unsaid things. Ava stared out the window at the blur of city lights, the reflection of her face still in that red lipstick, still in the gown, still looking like a woman who belonged to someone. Finally, she said, "So what now? Do I live in your house? Sleep in your bed? Smile on cue?" Leonardo didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer than she expected. "I won't make you do anything you don't want to." She turned to look at him. "But you already have." Sunday, 3:12 a.m. Ava lay awake in the apartment she no longer knew if she'd be returning to. On the coffee table sat a velvet box. She hadn't noticed it until after the driver dropped her off. No name on it. No card. Inside, a ring. Simple. Elegant. Platinum. Heavy in her palm. No proposal. No vows. Just a ring. A mark. She held it up to the light and realized something that shook her more than anything else that night. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't confused. She wasn't even angry. She was already his. Chapter 6. Power Games. The office looked the same. Same marble floors, same high ceilings, same impossible silence. But Ava wasn't the same woman who'd walked those halls a week ago with wide eyes and trembling hands. Today, she walked in with her chin up and her heels sharper than ever. Every assistant on the floor glanced up as she passed. Some looked curious, others uneasy. One woman in accounting nearly stood up, then thought better of it. That's what power looked like in this world. It didn't shout. It walked. And after Saturday night's announcement, Ava Romano wasn't just Leonardo Valenti's assistant anymore. She was his wife. Even if no paperwork had been signed, even if the ring still sat in its box, even if her bed was cold and her name hadn't changed. The people in this building believed it, and that was enough to tilt the floor beneath them. She found Leonardo already at his desk, reviewing 2 phones and half a dozen documents at once, his shirt sleeves rolled and his dark jacket slung over the chair like it had been tossed, not removed. He didn't look up when she entered, but he spoke anyway. "I was wondering how long it would take before you came to challenge me." She crossed the room without hesitation, heels slicing through the quiet, and dropped the ring box onto his desk like a gauntlet. "Challenge implies I've been playing your game," she said. Now he looked up. Gray eyes, still unreadable, but less cold than usual. And you haven't? She folded her arms. No, but I'm considering it. Leonardo leaned back in his chair, hands steepled under his chin, studying her like she was an equation that had just rewritten itself. You're not angry, he observed. No, she said. I'm calculating. A pause. Then he said, That's even more dangerous. Good, she replied. You married me without asking. You used me as a pawn in front of people who kill for sport. You dressed me like a trophy and introduced me like property. So let me be clear. If I'm staying in this game, I'm changing the rules. There was a flash in his eyes now. Approval, amusement. It was hard to say. Then change them, he said. Ava blinked. Just like that? Leonardo stood, all calm, quiet precision. But something coiled beneath his control, as if he found this whole exchange thrilling. Like this sparring, this tension, was more intimate than anything they could have done in bed. He stepped around the desk until he stood in front of her. Every powerful woman I know started as a pawn, he said. Then one day, she learned how to move like a queen. Are you ready to move, Ava? Her breath hitched, but she didn't step back. Try me, Tuesday, 2:13 p.m. She took her first shot that afternoon. The Valenti team had planned a private meeting with a weapons supplier from Eastern Europe. Leonardo had scheduled it behind closed doors, as always. But Ava intercepted the guest before he reached the office, guiding him instead into one of the formal boardrooms, with glass walls. It was subtle, deliberate, a visual shift, a message we're not hiding anymore. Leonardo entered 5 minutes later, paused at the doorway, and looked straight at her from across the room. No expression, but his eyes said, You're testing me. She smiled sweetly, then sat down at the head of the table. Wednesday, 11:44 a.m. She restructured the calendar, deleted 3 burner meetings, replaced them with off-record briefings she led herself. When one of Leonardo's enforcers, Marco, objected, she turned to him with a smile so cold it burned. If you're worried about my authority, she said, take it up with your boss. Then she nodded toward the glass wall, where Leonardo stood, watching, and said nothing. Thursday, 8:22 p.m. The argument finally happened. Private, predictable, explosive. He stood in the middle of his penthouse apartment, glass of whiskey untouched in his hand, while Ava paced in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows like she was ready to throw something through them. You're not used to being questioned, she said, voice low and tight. I'm not used to being challenged by someone I brought into this world, he replied. You didn't bring me into anything, she snapped. You dragged me in and expected silence. I've given you loyalty. You want obedience too? Get a dog. He set the glass down. You think you're in control, he said. I know I am, she replied. He stepped closer. There are people who would slit your throat just for standing next to me. Then I'll make sure they never get the chance. You don't know what that takes. I'm learning, Leonardo. He stared at her, hard, and then, You're not scared of me. No, she said. And that scares you. Silence stretched. Then, without warning, he reached for her. Not rough, not demanding, but like he was grabbing something slipping out of reach. His hand slid behind her neck, holding her still, his face just inches from hers. The air between them thick with too much tension, too much heat, too many unsaid things. "I'm not used to being challenged," he said again, softer now. "And I'm not used to being owned," she whispered. A heartbeat passed. Then two, and he let her go. Friday, 3:03 a.m. Ava stood on the penthouse balcony, barefoot, in one of Leonardo's shirts. The city glittered below, quiet, indifferent. Behind her, the man who ruled it all lay asleep on a couch, not a bed. They hadn't touched, not yet. But they'd fought. And in their world, that meant more than sex. Fighting meant trust. Fighting meant respect. Fighting meant she wasn't just another beautiful thing to him. She was becoming his equal. Chapter 7. Heat and Hate. The penthouse was too quiet. Ava stood in the open kitchen, barefoot on cold marble, her hand wrapped around a glass of red wine she hadn't touched. The city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows glittered like a promise no one intended to keep. Behind her, the air changed. She didn't turn around. "I'm not in the mood to be followed," she said. Leonardo's voice answered from the shadows. "I wasn't following you. This is my home." She turned slowly, eyes meeting his across the distance. "You gave me a closet. Now you think that makes this a marriage?" "I gave you protection," he said, "and you took my name." Leonardo stepped into the light. All black shirt and bare forearms, no tie, no jacket, casual only in appearance. There was nothing casual about the way he looked at her. Nothing soft, nothing kind, but everything intense. "You're not just my wife," he said. "You're my shield. My answer. My silence." She took a slow sip of wine, finally. "And what are you to me?" He didn't answer, didn't flinch, didn't have to. The silence between them thickened like smoke, the kind that clung to skin and settled into the lungs. "You're angry," he said. "No," she replied. "I'm furious." Leonardo stepped closer. She didn't move. "You walk into my life," she continued. "Burn everything to the ground, call it protection, and expect me to thank you for it. I expect you to understand that this world doesn't give room for thank yous." "You think you're doing me a favor," she said, "like I should be grateful for the cage because the bars are gold." "It's not a cage." "Then let me walk." He stopped a few feet away. "No." "Why?" "Because I don't trust anyone else at my back." "Then get used to watching your front," she snapped. Her voice cracked with emotion she didn't mean to show. But it was too late. Leonardo's jaw tightened, his eyes darker now, something raw bleeding into his otherwise unreadable expression. And then he did something reckless, something stupid. He stepped close enough to feel her breath, close enough for her pulse to rage against her skin. And he said, "You want me to treat you like a partner?" She nodded once, defiant, breathless. "Then act like one," he growled. "Own the fire you started." And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't slow, it wasn't sweet. It was war. It was everything they'd held back exploding at once. Weeks of tension, of near touches and unspoken fury and eye contact that said everything they weren't ready to say out loud. His hand slid into her hair, twisting tight, holding her in place like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. She gasped into his mouth, biting down out of instinct, and he only groaned, deep, rough, like he'd been waiting for a fight. Her wine glass shattered on the floor, forgotten. He lifted her like she weighed nothing and set her on the marble island, lips still on hers, hands on her hips, dragging her closer, demanding more. Ava kissed him back with fire. No submission, no fear. She kissed him like she hated him for making her want this, like she wanted to burn him alive. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. His voice was raw. This was never part of the plan. "I'm not a plan," she whispered. "You're everything that could ruin me. Then don't let me." He looked at her for a long time, then stepped back. Just enough to let her down off the counter, but not far enough to break whatever just snapped between them. "Don't think this changes anything," he said. "Oh, it changes everything," she replied, and walked past him. Later that night, they slept in the same bed for the first time. Not touching, not speaking, but not apart. The space between them wasn't cold. It was waiting. Sunday, 6:07 a.m. Leonardo woke to find her standing by the window, hair loose, one of his shirts draped over her body, coffee in hand. She didn't say good morning, didn't look at him. She just sipped her coffee and said, "Your enemies won't believe this is real unless you start acting like it." Leonardo sat up, rubbed the back of his neck, and replied, "What do you suggest?" She turned, eyes sharp, alive. "Take me to Rome." He blinked. "Why?" She smirked. "Because that's where they'll expect your wife to be. Not here, playing house, not behind glass walls. You want to sell the illusion." She stepped closer. "Make it a spectacle." He stared at her like she was a riddle he didn't mind solving. "You're getting good at this," he said. She smiled. "No," she replied. "I'm already better than you expected." Chapter 8. Enemies and Allies. Rome, Italy. The sun was too bright to feel safe. Ava stepped out of the private jet and into the dry Mediterranean air, her heels clicking against the sun-warmed tarmac as a black Maserati pulled up with surgical precision. A driver in tailored black opened the door with a slight nod, but said nothing. Leonardo walked beside her, immaculately dressed as always. Black slacks, white shirt, sleeves rolled, sunglasses hiding the steel in his eyes. He hadn't spoken much since the plane took off from New York, but he didn't need to. He existed in stillness the way other men existed in power. And here, on foreign soil, he didn't just look dangerous. He looked untouchable. Villa Serafini sat on a hill above Rome, walled and guarded like a small fortress wrapped in ivy and heritage. The kind of place passed down through bloodlines and sealed with secrets. Leonardo didn't own it, but he may as well have. The guards at the gates didn't ask for ID, didn't blink. The family name was all the password he needed. Ava took in the place as they entered. Roman columns, iron balconies, terracotta walls aged like fine leather. It was beautiful, violently beautiful, in the way expensive things were, soaked in history and the scent of old money and old power. A maid led her to her guest suite. No key needed. Doors here didn't need to lock. Power was protection. And it wasn't long before the first message arrived. A note, handwritten in blocky Italian. tucked under a crystal tumbler beside her bedside water. It read, Non tutti I sorrisi sono alleati. Non tutti gli alleati sorridono. Not every smile is an ally. Not every ally smiles. No signature, no symbol. Just truth. She read it twice, then a third time. Then she folded it and tucked it into her coat. Wednesday, 9:40 p.m., dinner at Villa Serafini. It looked like a gala, but felt like a hunt. Dozens of guests in black ties and silk gowns mingled under golden chandeliers, sipping from goblets older than America and laughing at jokes that weren't funny. The air smelled like expensive perfume and quiet resentment. Ava entered on Leonardo's arm, dressed in red this time. Not fire engine red, not cherry, but blood. Silk, deep cut, slit to the thigh. A dress that didn't whisper power. It threatened it. Eyes followed them. But not like New York. This wasn't awe. This was calculation. They didn't want her dead. They wanted to know if she was a weakness. She kept her back straight. She smiled only when she had to. And when Don Matteo of the Bernardi family approached with a cane in one hand and a look that belonged on a predator, she didn't flinch. So this is the infamous wife, he said in accented English, taking her hand and lifting it, cold lips brushing her knuckles. Bellissima, too sharp in the eyes for a real bride, too calm in the face for a fake one. What are you? Leonardo was about to speak, but Ava beat him to it. I'm the line you shouldn't cross. A beat of silence. Then a slow smile spread across Matteo's face. Ah, he said. A woman with teeth. Leonardo finally spoke. She bites harder than I do. They left the ballroom early, not because they were tired, but because Ava had started seeing faces she recognized from dossiers. Not friends, not allies. Men and women who had tried to sabotage Valenti operations 2 years ago. People Leonardo had outplayed, outbid, or outlasted. And now they were here, smiling too wide, laughing too hard. One of them, a man named Arturo Marini, watched her like he already knew her measurements. She didn't break his gaze. She just noted it. And later, when she and Leonardo sat alone in the villa's library, she told him everything. Who had stared, who had smiled, who had looked away when they shouldn't have. You don't miss much, he said, sipping his scotch, seated like a king on a velvet chaise. I don't have the luxury, she said. You said I was a shield. I can't protect you if I'm guessing. He studied her for a long moment, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. There are people here who want me dead. I figured that part out, she replied, dry. There's a possibility one of them invited us just to prove I bleed. Ava leaned back in her chair, the hem of her dress falling across her legs like spilled wine. Then let's make sure they bleed first. Leonardo tilted his glass toward her. You're becoming dangerous. She smirked. No, I'm becoming useful. Thursday, 3:03 a.m. The first real threat arrived. A guard found it taped under the hood of Leonardo's Maserati. A single bullet, wrapped in paper. He who hides behind a woman has already lost. Leonardo read it in the library, lit only by the fireplace. Ava stood across the room in one of his shirts, watching him with a quiet that felt more like war drums than peace. You know who sent it? She asked. He nodded once. I have a guess. Are you going to respond? Yes, he said. But his eyes were on her. You're going to deliver it. Friday, 12:15 p.m., a cafe in Trastevere. Ava sat alone at a corner table, sunglasses on, espresso untouched. She wasn't armed. She wasn't nervous. She was bait. Across the street, Arturo Marini exited a wine shop, surrounded by two of his men. No tie, relaxed posture, laughing too loudly. He looked across the street, saw her, and stopped laughing. Ava stood slowly, walked to the edge of the sidewalk and handed a small black envelope to a passing courier. Inside, a photo of the bullet he'd sent, and another bullet, one fired. Through a melon, through the eye, through proof. She didn't wait for him to read it. She turned and walked away like nothing had happened. Friday night, 11 p.m., Villa Serafini, Leonardo's room. She told him how it went, how Arturo froze, how his men panicked, how no one followed her. When she finished, Leonardo crossed the room and stood in front of her. There was no smile on his face, but there was something new in his eyes. Respect. You're not my shield anymore, he said. No? She asked. No, he said. You're my edge. He kissed her. Hard, but slower this time. Not a war. A choice. And this time, she didn't push him away. Chapter 9. Blood and Vows. Saturday, 6:47 p.m. Villa Serafini. The first explosion didn't shatter glass. It shattered silence. A single concussive blast, deep and distant, rattled through the estate like thunder underwater. Ava felt it in her chest before she heard it, standing in front of the mirror, zipping up a dark velvet dress, hair half-pinned. She didn't scream. She moved. Fast, out the door, down the hall. Barefoot, instinct over elegance, listening for footsteps, for shouting, for gunfire. Not inside the villa, at the gate. Leonardo was already on the move. Two of his men, Matteo and Cass, were by his side, weapons drawn, suits wrinkled from tension, not fashion. One look at him, and Ava knew. This wasn't a warning shot. They breached the outer perimeter, Matteo reported. Explosives on the west wall. 2 men down, 1 SUV got through the fire line. How many inside? We don't know yet. Leonardo turned to Ava. Go upstairs. Now. She didn't move. Not a chance. This isn't your war. It is now, she cut in. Or did you forget who delivered your threat? He stared at her for half a second too long, then tossed her a gun. 7:04 p.m. inside the villa. The corridors were no longer quiet. Boots thundered across polished stone. Men barked orders in Italian and Russian. Somewhere below, a scream tore through the air, cut short. Ava ducked behind a pillar near the east wing staircase, heart racing, breath low. She wasn't a killer. She wasn't trained for this. But adrenaline rewrites everything, and fear, when harnessed, sharpens faster than any blade. She spotted one, a man in black, rifle slung, face masked. Not Valenti, not Serafini, enemy. He moved past her without looking. She waited. 1 breath. 2. Then brought the butt of the pistol down hard on his skull. He crumpled without a sound. She took his earpiece. 7:18 p.m. Leonardo fought like he ruled. Not with rage, not with chaos, with precision. Every shot was placed, every movement efficient. He didn't yell, he didn't panic. He was the center of the storm, and Ava watched him from across the main hall, backlit by shattered chandeliers, blood on his shirt, eyes locked on every shadow that moved. He saw her, and for the first time, he looked afraid. Not for himself, for her. He mouthed something. Run. She didn't. 7:20 p.m. The ambush. They came through the wine cellar. 4 of them. 1 with a shotgun, 2 with suppressed pistols, 1 carrying a machete. Ava fired before she even thought. The first 2 went down in flashes. The third fired back, caught her in the side. A burst of heat, a scream ripped from her throat. She hit the floor, clutching her waist, fingers wet with blood. The last one stepped over the bodies, gun raised. And then, bang, he dropped. Leonardo stood behind him, gun smoking, expression unreadable. He rushed to her side. "You're hit," he said. "No shit," she gasped. "We need to get you out." "No, you need to finish this." "I'm not leaving you here." "I'm not asking," she whispered. "I'm telling you. Go." His hands were shaking. Leonardo Valenti, Mafia king, feared by half the globe, shaking. "Why?" he asked. "Why are you still here?" She blinked up at him, vision going blurry. "Because I wasn't lying," she whispered. "I'm not your shield. I'm your edge." 8:03 p.m. Villa secured. The assault failed. Valenti men took back the house. Reinforcements arrived. Sirens in the distance. But by the time they came, the war was already over. And Ava was unconscious. Leonardo carried her himself, through firelight and ash, past bodies and blood, straight into the heart of the villa, straight to the chapel. 10:36 p.m. She woke to candlelight. Pain lanced through her side. She was stitched up, wrapped in gauze, her skin hot from fever, her head light, and Leonardo was beside her, kneeling, holding her hand. "Where are we?" she croaked. "The chapel." "I'm not dead, am I?" He gave the faintest smile. "No. You're the only thing that survived." Her head rolled toward him, and then she saw it. The ring. Not in the box, not on a table. On her finger. "What the hell is this?" she asked. "You almost died," he said, voice low and wrecked. "For me. Because of me. So I made a decision, without asking me. Again. I'll keep asking when we're not at war." Silence, then. "Is it legal?" "No," he said. "But it's real." Ava closed her eyes. "Say it then." He leaned close, forehead to hers. "I vow," he said softly, "that I will never use you again." "I vow," she whispered back, "that if you do, I'll take everything you own." He smiled. "I vow to protect you. I vow to protect us." A long pause. Then quietly, "I vow to love you, if I ever figure out how." Ava's breath hitched, and she whispered, "I think I already have." Sunday, 4:17 a.m. They lay together in silence. No more pretending, no more titles. Just blood and vows and whatever came next. Chapter 10. His Forever. Rome. 1 week after the attack. The sun sank behind the hills of Trastevere in gold-soaked silence. Outside the villa, the last of the security was packing up. Inside, the walls felt colder, cleaner, emptier. The blood had been washed away. But what remained behind was deeper than damage. It was decision. Ava stood at the window of her private suite, her healing wound tight beneath the silk wraparound dress someone had left on the bed. Navy blue, understated, sleeveless. Her hair was pulled back loosely. Her eyes were calm. Too calm. Because today was the day Leonardo promised to give her what he never gave anyone. A way out. 7:04 p.m. He waited for her in the West Wing study, where the fireplace crackled low and golden. He wore no jacket, just a dark shirt rolled at the sleeves, collar open, hands folded loosely in front of him. No guards, no glass of whiskey, no weapons, just him. And a box. She entered without knocking. The door shut behind her like the last page in a book. "Sit," he said gently. She didn't. "You said you had something for me," she said. Leonardo nodded. He pushed the box forward. Ava eyed it. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't a weapon. She stepped closer, opened it. Inside, a passport, 2 plane tickets, and a check. No name on it, just a signature, and the kind of amount that could buy a new life 5 times over. The destination on the tickets? Anywhere. She stared at the contents, then at him. "This is my out?" Leonardo nodded once. "If you want it. And if I take it? You disappear. No debts, no enemies. I erase every trace of your name from my books. No one follows. No one stops you." She stared at him. "What's the catch?" His jaw tightened. "There isn't one. Not anymore. You never give without taking. I gave you a gun. I gave you power. I gave you my enemies." He stepped closer. "But I also gave you fear. Blood. Pain. I let you be used to protect my empire. You also let me fight," she said. "You shouldn't have had to." "Maybe," she said, softer now. "But I did. And I don't regret it." A long beat passed. Then he said, "If you walk now, I won't follow. I won't send anyone. I won't come after you. You'll be safe. And if I stay?" His voice dropped. "Then you're not just my wife. You're not just the shield, or the edge, or the illusion." He took a step closer. "You're the only thing that makes this throne mean something." Ava's heart thundered. Not from fear, but from finally knowing the weight of her own power. She reached into the box, took the passport, and held it in both hands. She looked down at it, then up at him, then slowly, deliberately, she placed it back inside. She closed the box and pushed it back. "I'm not leaving," she said. Leonardo didn't move. "You're sure?" She stepped into him now, her hand resting gently against his chest, right over his heart. "You gave me an out, and that means more than anything you've ever offered." He swallowed, just once. "I don't want to own you," he said. "You never did," she replied. "You just didn't know how to let me stay." He kissed her. Not with hunger, not with desperation, but with everything else. The kind of kiss that felt like a promise, not a possession. The kind of kiss that said, "You're not mine because I took you. You're mine because you chose me." 2 months later. New York City. The world believed Leonardo Valenti had softened. After Rome, rumors spread that he'd been injured, that he'd nearly been killed, that his wife, new, sharp, beautiful, had stood in front of a gun meant for him. They whispered about how she now sat in on his meetings, about how her name showed up on foreign shell corporations, about how she was remapping the empire from the inside, quietly, cleanly, without leaving blood on her hands, and about how he looked at her, like she was the only thing that scared him anymore. One last scene. Ava stood on the balcony of their penthouse, watching the city below, barefoot, holding a glass of red wine. Leonardo stepped up behind her, silent, always too close. "Still think I should have run?" she asked. He brushed a hand over her waist, pulled her gently into him. "No," he said. "I think you were always built to reign." They didn't smile. They didn't toast. They just stood together, not in love's illusion, but in its reality. Two wolves, one throne, and not a soul left who could challenge them. Epilogue. 5 years later. Rome. Spring. The estate had changed. The stone walls were still tall, the guards still trained, the iron gates still closed to the world. But there was laughter in the courtyard now, the kind that only children could bring. It echoed between marble columns and across trimmed gardens, cutting through the old quiet with something new. Life. Ava Valenti stood barefoot in the garden, one hand on her hip, the other cradling a baby on her hip. Dark curls, chubby fingers, the soft, sleepy weight of a 1-year-old girl who ruled the house without saying a word. Across the grass, 2 boys ran barefoot and wild, one 5, the other 4, shrieking in a language that blended Italian and English, their tiny suits stained from the dirt they weren't supposed to be rolling in. "I told you both, no wrestling in the fountain," Ava called, smiling despite herself. "They're Valentis," came a voice from behind her. "They were born to fight." She turned. Leonardo. Older now, and somehow even more dangerous for it. His hair a little longer, streaks of gray at the temples, lines at the corners of his eyes, not from stress, from smiling. He wasn't in a suit, just black slacks, sleeves rolled up, no shoes, and a look on his face that hadn't changed since the day she didn't walk away. That look that said, "You're mine. You chose me. I'll never stop choosing you back." He crossed the grass in 3 long strides and kissed her, right there, with their daughter between them, laughing as he bumped her nose. 5 years, she murmured against his lips. Feels like 20. Feels like yesterday. "You still regret not letting me leave?" He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "I'd burn the world again to have this," he said. "You, them, all of it." Later that night, the villa was silent again, but not cold. Ava sat on the edge of their bed, brushing her hair out, wearing one of his old white shirts that barely covered her thighs. The door was cracked. The baby monitor sat on the nightstand, and Leonardo was watching her from the shadows. shirt off, slacks low on his hips, a storm behind his eyes that hadn't softened with time, only sharpened. "You know they call you La Lupa now?" he asked, voice low. Ava smiled. "The she-wolf," she said. "Good. I earned that." "You terrify diplomats," he said, walking toward her. "You terrify presidents." He grinned. "I married the deadliest woman in Europe." She leaned back on her hands, legs parted just enough. "And you're the fool who gave her 3 babies and a throne." His voice dropped lower. "No, I gave her everything, and she made it mean something." His mouth was on hers before she finished exhaling. The kiss was slow, deep, full of years. Not just passion, but memory. The kind of kiss that says, "I know every part of you, and I still want more." She gasped into him when his hands slid under the shirt, finding familiar skin and curves that still made him lose control. "You're still trouble," he murmured against her neck. "And you still like it." His mouth moved lower. Her shirt was gone before she realized it. His hands were on her thighs, his mouth on her chest, his voice in her ear. 5 years, 3 children, half an empire. He looked up at her now, all of her laid bare. "And you're still the most dangerous thing I've ever touched." She pulled him down into her. "I better be." They made love like people who had nothing to prove, but everything to protect. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't rushed. It was ownership, intimacy, trust sharpened into heat. The way his hands knew where she needed him. The way her legs wrapped around him like she'd always belonged there. The way they still fought for control, even in the dark, but always gave in. Together. He whispered her name when he came, not like a man breaking, but like a man surrendering to the only thing that ever truly had him. Sometime after, they lay tangled in silk sheets and shadows, hearts slowing, her head on his chest, his hand resting on the curve of her waist. "You still think this wasn't part of the plan?" she asked, half asleep. "I think this was the part I didn't know I needed," he said. She smiled into his skin and slept. Outside, the villa was quiet. But inside, the Valentis had already built their legacy. Not just with bullets, not just with blood, but with loyalty, fire, and a love that refused to die.